I think this is genuinely the key to raising $5 million. Hello, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Catherine Cross, and I am the founder of Anja Health. We basically help pregnant parents freeze stem cells from their umbilical cords and placenta to use for potential future disease treatment in the family. And in 2022, I closed $5 million in venture capital funding for my startup. We raised from Y Combinator, Alexis Ohanian's Fund 776, Balaji, the ex-CTO of Coinbase, the CEO of Row, some Olympians, and many more. So today I'm going to be exposing to you the exact memo that I myself used to raise this $5 million, and I'm going to be unlocking the key secrets and things that I do that I think most other people don't do that I actually think really help me fundraise $5 million. I think this is genuinely the key to raising $5 million. Number one, I personally recommend, especially at the early stage, not actually raising with a deck. I think that the more information that a venture capitalist has, the more reasons that they have to potentially say no, and you basically want to either limit the amount of information that they are receiving or only give them reasons to say yes to you. And I think that reasons to say yes can really be conveyed via vibes. I know it sounds dumb, but a lot of early VC investing is based on vibe of the founder because the idea and traction is typically very minimal. So they're just kind of going off of vibes of the founder and whether or not they think the founder has grit, etc. And especially if you're more extroverted like myself, you can really convey that in person and not through a deck. So you don't want to give them too much data to analyze and come up with reasons as to why they can say no to you. So I actually used a memo, which I think has become more popular in the past few years or so. I used what's called an investment memo on Notion, and we did not use a deck. And I think that even if I were to ever raise more money, more rounds, etc., I think that decks are the way to go because you can reduce the amount of information that someone receives. And it also feels a little bit more digestible than your average deck where you have hundreds of slides. Or I guess it's more like in the tens of slides, but it just feels like a whole thing. I feel like decks feel tired and memos feel wired. So without further ado, here is my Notion memo that helped me raise $5 million. So first of all, I wanted to open with the mission because typically during my pitches, I noticed that this was kind of like a hook in a way, and people really started to engage with the story once I dropped my personal story to the business. So I created Anja because my brother's last chance at treatment for cerebral palsy was umbilical cord blood, but we couldn't find a match because we're mixed race. And I included a photo of us as kids. And then I also typically discussed the fact that my brother passed away in 2021, and that's really what prompted me to start the business, which is true, but I honestly don't like to talk about it too much because I really don't like the feeling of people pitying me. But I got a lot of feedback during my pitches that I really should be bringing that up because it's kind of jarring and it's what gets people to listen to me. Also, another thing I realized is that it's kind of a good litmus test as to the EQ of the investor, because I noticed that sometimes the investors would say, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry," and sometimes they would just be like, "Cool, anyways," and then move on. And so I got a good sense myself of how the investor is. And I think a lot of people assume that pitching to a VC is kind of a one-sided situation where you're seeking something that they have that you want. But in reality, you should be thinking about it very similar to dating, where you are also doing a vibe check on the investor. Like, the worst thing that you could do is have a really painful, hard to work with investor that doesn't vibe with your values. So you should also be thinking throughout the moment of pitching an investor, basically if they match your energy. Okay, then I went into team. I ordered it this way because I felt like we started with my own story and that relates to us as a team. And so it was a good segue into the actual team rather than segueing into the product, which feels very complicated. So I wouldn't necessarily do this order for all products, but I think for us it worked because it kind of serves as a good segue to lean into the more complicated part of what we do, which is how the product works and the benefits of the product. So then we introduced team. When I first closed the initial part of the round, including the lead, the team was actually just myself and the medical advisory board, but gradually I ended up building out this deck further as we hired more and more people within the next 6 months of the business. So until October 2022, and I closed the round, the initial part of the round in June 2022, but then I continued to accept more angel checks at a slightly higher valuation into October 2022. So that's why this contains the full update so that I include the full deck that truly got me to $5 million in raised venture capital funding. Sidebar, I would not recommend hiring that quickly. I think these are all amazing teammates, but ultimately I feel like I should have done more intentional hires and scaled up the things that were working rather than hiring people that just felt really passionate about the product, which is what I did. And I think that that can be good, but I think I should have done both. Or I was hiring evangelists for the product that also were scaling up things that were already working, but I was just kind of hiring people that felt passionately about the product. So I don't know, first time founder, I wouldn't call it a mistake because it was definitely a good learning, and I met amazing people. I love the teammates that worked with me during this process, but could have done differently. So yeah, so under myself, I listed my brand names that I'm affiliated with. So Social Media Design Wiz, formerly Goldman Sachs, founder of Bridge Strategy, a consultancy that I did. I have another YouTube video on this. And then pregnancy influencer via Anja Health, because we had a good social media following at this point. And then I listed similar attributes to the other folks that were on the team, basically wanting to lean into any brands and any kind of really good promotional material that lended itself to demonstrating that I hire well and that they come from good places and that we are a well-rounded team. And then I also included information about our medical advisory board because I think that's also really important, especially as a healthcare company. So I included information about our 3 OBGYNs that advise us. And then I went into what the actual product does. So at the time we were just called Anja, not Anja Health. I later added on the health for credibility purposes, but essentially we help pregnant parents capture stem cells from their umbilical cords. We have a simple 3-step solution: receive kit, bring to birth, call for pickup. We are community driven, personalized, maximize cell count, placenta banking included, affordable. So I wanted to illustrate all of the ways in which we are different from our competitors. And I wanted to illustrate the value props and our differentiators really early on so that people could get a good sense of what the product actually does within itself. And then I wanted to dive into traction. So honestly, our greatest indicators for traction thus far was me making TikTok content. It was where we got 100% of our customers. We didn't start really getting customers from other channels until about a year or so into the business. And even then, it was always the greatest. And even then, the greatest acquisition channel for us was me making TikTok content organically. So I wanted to illustrate the true impact that my social media was having. And so I included videos, screenshots of comments, personal text, anything that made me feel really proud to be the founder of this company, I included to help others understand why we were doing what we were doing and the impact that it was having. So I included this organic UGC video from a parent, a mom that banked with us. It was an unsolicited review. She made a 2.5-minute long video about us, which I was really, really happy about.
For all you new or expecting moms out there who want to bank your cord, but you feel like I did, like it's so expensive, then I have like the perfect place for you, because I found one and I feel like it was just like dropped in from the TikTok Kevin gods themselves. And I'm going to show you who she is, and you guys are going to definitely want to bank your cords because it's a reasonable price. And she's a TikToker, so you should go follow her. This is it right here. Anja Health.
And then I included comments that I think had good early signs of PMF. For instance, this comment from Oshi's World. She said, "I've watched all of your videos at least twice, and I thought that that was a crazy amount of time to be investing into a creator just about pregnancy." So I included that. I will definitely refer you next time someone I know gets pregnant. That kind of speaks to our potential K factor for word of mouth referrals. And then I included positive reviews and just us impacting people's birth and pregnancy experiences and making them feel better. And then I dove into traction, which was our monthly recurring revenue. Of course, recurring revenue is better than regular revenue. And we, in theory, could have also done booked revenue because we have an ongoing subscription and very little churn. But I feel like booked revenue can sometimes be an inflated metric. So I wanted to demonstrate our actual real revenue. Our monthly recurring revenue at this time was around $21,000. And then I also wanted to show our other great indicator of traction, which was my social media growth. So I also included a graph that I made on Excel of my TikTok following getting up to 150K, which is kind of wild because in 9 months, I grew from 30K to 150K. And I think it only took me about 11 months to really get to that 150K point. I guess what's crazy about this is that I actually started to plateau at 164K and I was never able to break beyond that barrier. So kind of wild to look back on this and think that I really did have that kind of up into the right growth, at least initially with my social media. And you can see towards the end here, it did start to plateau a little bit, but we were still able to continue past that. So these graphs weren't necessarily so up and to the right as you would optimally like them to be, but it was enough to demonstrate the traction that we had. And when I initially closed our lead and such, the graphs looked even more up and to the right. And right around the time that I was closing out my Y Combinator process and we were demoing a demo day was really the key factor because we were peaking all over the place. And that is when you want to raise when you are knowing that you're at your peak. And I know it's easy to think, well, if we're at our peak now, we can keep growing. You can have that peak again in the future and an even greater peak. But if you just just feel a strong sense of momentum, it is the time to fundraise. So you kind of always want to be fundraising and always preparing to fundraise, in the sense that you always kind of want to have some VCs in your back pocket. You want to be kind of warming up these relationships. You of course don't want to waste time taking a lot of VC calls when you're not fundraising, but I would definitely keep in mind the fact that if you do suddenly have a crazy skyrocket growth moment, you want to be able to very quickly line up VC conversations within 2 weeks or so, and you want to have basically 7 calls a day for every weekday for 2 weeks straight. And I think that that is the best way to run a fundraising process, because not only are you able to illustrate a sense of momentum within the company and then have the attitude of, okay, I'm going to close this out and then get back to building, but also it's a forcing function for the VC discussions that you're having, for the VCs to make a very fast decision, because you can say, oh, I'm having a trillion other calls today and this week, so can you get back to me really soon? And then they do have to get back to you really soon. And also, if you're talking to a lot of VCs talk to one another, so they can kind of back channel, engage with others, how they're feeling, who they're talking to, and if they hear from multiple other VCs, oh, I'm talking to the same person, then they will start to get FOMO, and FOMO is really the key to getting a VC to close. So at the end, I included my email as a little CTA to folks that were observing. But yeah, I think a lot of people, when I show them this, they are surprised at how little information there is, but really this is all a VC needs to have written in front of them. Everything else you can convey in person. And if you're someone like me that's really extroverted and probably does better in person than over a deck or memo, then it's really ideal to just answer questions in person. And basically, if someone asked me if I had a deck, I would just say no. And I wouldn't send them this memo until after I pitched them. I would sometimes send it before if I felt that they were really founder friendly and I could trust them. But otherwise, I would just say, we do not have a deck, we have a memo, period, and not send a memo. So you just want to withhold as much information as possible. It's so similar to dating the entire VC pitch process. You want to kind of hold cards to your chest initially. You want them to have FOMO that you are a scarce object, and you want to give them reasons to say yes to you when they're probably looking for reasons to say no to you. So at least in my experience, I feel that there are some parallels to dating, but maybe call me crazy. So yeah, that is the deck that helped me raise $5 million. I hope this was helpful. Thanks for watching.
Like you need remind, trying to do it over, bring it back and rewind it, but all that glitters